All of us here at Marquee Sports Network are saddened to learn about the passing of one of the greatest Cubs of all time, Ryne Sandberg. Bob Costas, who called the infamous Sandberg game on June 23rd, 1984, was kind enough to take the time to join our Postgame show Monday to talk about the life of Ryno. So let's take a listen to Costas and Cole Wright reminisce about the legend.
Well, Cole, I knew it was coming, as most people who follow the Cubs did. I knew it was an any day now situation, but it's still heartbreaking. The fact that it doesn't come as a surprise, that it isn't a shock, doesn't lessen the heartbreak. He was only 65 years old, and until his cancer hit, and even a year ago when you and I were present at the unveiling of his statue, and he looked great, felt great. The cancer was in remission until only a couple months later it came back. At that point, you're looking at a 64-year-old man, or there's some video of it with his wife, Margaret, and the big crowd outside Wrigley Field. And that scene right there, which meant as much to me that day as anything else you could have mentioned, that all the ball players, I guess Craig Counsell led them out, all the ball players in uniform, showing the generational connections that are almost unique to baseball, and the respect shown for one of the great players in the franchise's history. That was such a perfect day in every way. And we had reason to believe that Ryne had many, many good years ahead with his family, with his grandchildren, and then it came back, and it's terribly sad. It's a cliche when you say that, yes, someone was great at what they did, but they were also a wonderful person. And sometimes that's only partially true. Ryne Sandberg was a heck of a good guy, and it's just heartbreaking that his life should be cut short this way.
Absolutely. And Bob, as the keynote speaker at his statue dedication and the man who was on the call for the Ryne Sandberg game, what does it mean to you to be forever attached to Ryno?
Well, I was a bit player that day. Tony Kubek and I were calling the game. I think it's important to remember, and perhaps people have heard me say this before, but you had to appreciate the different circumstances 41 years ago and in the decades preceding. The game of the week really was, for much of the country, the game of the week. If you lived in a non-big league city, that was probably the only game you had a chance to see. And the Cubs were an exception because they televised all their games on WGN. But in most of the country, New York perhaps excluded, in most of the country, 80 to 90% of the games were on radio only. Most teams might have televised 30 or so road games. That was it. So the Saturday afternoon game for much of the country, that's when you had a chance to see Fernando Valenzuela face Johnny Bench. Or on that Saturday, on a perfect, beautiful day at Wrigley Field, to see those old rivals, the Cardinals and the Cubs, go at it. Now, have there been other games since then that had all the elements, at least statistically, that game had? Yeah. But not all the surrounding elements of Cardinals Cubs, of much of the nation watching. That game got a higher rating. I guess this is the first of the two home runs, the one that tied it in the ninth, and then he tied it again with 2 out and Bob Didier on base, again off Bruce Sutter, which shows you what a different era it was. Whitey Herzog had Bruce Sutter in the game for 3+ innings. And Bruce wasn't that demonstrative on the mound, but he was so disgusted with himself. There he is. Look at the way he snatches the ball back. Just utterly disgusted. But all the elements were in place. That game got a higher rating, as did many Saturday games of the week, than some postseason games get today. And it was the signature game of what turned out to be a Hall of Fame career. It marked him as a candidate, maybe the front runner for the MVP award, which he did win. And it marked the Cubs to a national audience as an actual contender. They were transformed from the lovable losers they long had been to a contender, and a team that came within one heartbreaking loss of going all the way to the World Series. So you had all these elements combined, and it was something which, even though I was a bit player, it connected me and Ryne Sandberg for more than 40 years. That's why Ryne invited me to come back last June 23rd of 2024 to be part of that ceremony, which you were also part of, Cole, because every time I crossed paths with him, he would mention it before I would, but I knew it was coming. He'd talk about June 23rd, 1984. And, there aren't many games, especially regular season games, that have a name. The George Brett Pine Tar game and the Sandberg game. And all around the country, baseball fans, not just in Chicago, at least if you're a fan of a certain age, when you say the Sandberg game, everybody knows what you're talking about.
Bob, 10-time All-Star, 9-time Gold Glover. For all the youngsters who never got a chance to see Ryne Sandberg or haven't gone down that rabbit hole on YouTube, paint a picture for us. What kind of player was he?
He was a complete player. He was an elegant player. I wouldn't call him a spectacular player, but he did everything the right way. He was fundamentally sound. He always seemed to be properly positioned. He was very, very sure-handed, had long consecutive game streaks, errorless streaks, won 9 consecutive Gold Gloves, 10-time All-Star. He wasn't an overwhelming power hitter, but he had one season where he hit 40 home runs. His MVP season, he hit only 19, 2 of them that day against the Cardinals, but he also had 19 triples, which led the National League. So a guy hits 19 homers, hits 19 triples, wins a Gold Glove, can steal bases, bats over 300. That's a complete ball player. And you put enough of those seasons together, and you're in Cooperstown. And until his health failed him, Ryne he always came back. Every July, he came back to Cooperstown.
And despite knowing that Ryne was always going to bring up that Sandberg game, Bob, is there one moment that maybe really just lives in infamy with you that you'll always remember about Ryne Sandberg?
Well, you never get tired of it. If you're lucky enough to be in some small way connected to a game that is an historic game, and it really forged a friendship. Ryne and I were in touch on a regular basis, and while I wasn't speaking with him, I was speaking with people close to him over the past week, and knowing that his passing was imminent. I guess it's probably the second of the 2 home runs, the one in the bottom of the 10th. That's when the game went from exciting to close to unbelievable that it would play out the way it did. And then eventually, it's the last guy on the Cub bench, Davey Owen, the last guy that Jim Fry had available, who lines a single over the drawn-in infield to win the game in the 11th inning for the Cubs, 12-11.
Bob, if you could share with us, you said that you remained in contact with Ryno throughout the years. What was your last conversation with him like?
It was in and around that event, the unveiling of the statue, and we reminisced a bit. There were some texts between us when I checked in on how he was feeling. And then the last couple of texts went unanswered. And so I knew that it must have taken a turn for the worse. And I spoke with people close to him, including in the last 48 hours. So I knew that, as many other people I'm sure did, that the moment was close at hand. There have been at least 2 and maybe 3 documentaries about that game, about the Sandberg game. Think about that. It seems almost crazy that would be the case. And in one of them, it opened with Ryno sitting with his grandchildren on his lap, and they're watching the video of that game. And he's explaining to these little kids, no, that's Davey Owen, and that's Bobby Dernier. Is he your teammate? Says a little 5-year-old. Yeah, did you like him? Says the little boy or girl. And just the connection, the generational connection, and him reveling in his family. And he never played the hero. He never big timed anybody. He had that boy next door, all-American boy quality, but he was proud of his career. And sports is something that you can be a kid and you can understand it at some level. So he could share it with his children and with his grandchildren. And I think that, and Bruce can talk about this, and I'm sure that Elise has her thoughts as well. The generational connections forged by baseball. It's true in all sports, but it's true to a greater extent in baseball than any other sport. There's an element there that connects generations and connects those of us who intersected around an event like the Sandberg game and around his career, because, I was around for a good portion of it, lucky enough to be around for a good portion of it when those games were on NBC.
All of our hearts go out to the Sandberg family and all of those affected by the loss. We'll see you tomorrow for our pregame show starting at 5:30 Central Time, which will be filled with many more memories of Ryne Sandberg.